I think the reinvent law kind of people up at Michigan State are doing some very interesting writing and thinking about not just kind of the technology that exists today, but the technology that's going to exist in about 10 years, especially around big data. A couple of years ago, when people came to talk to me about big data, I kind of hung up the phone rather quickly, and now I listen to them quite carefully. But the things that they're talking about is actually being able to predict legal outcomes, court decisions, outcomes of arbitrations, actually before you go through the legal process, which has quite kind of revolutionary implications, I think, and is probably one of the most exciting things that they're talking about. So I do think technology, right now, is going through another shift. We've probably seen several during our careers, at least people as old as us. And I think we're in the middle of another one that is really quite significant. So I do think there's going to be some very significant changes to the way legal services are provided. Probably the most radical changes will be actually in parts of the legal market that are not served by some of the big global law firms. But I think the changes will impact pretty much the entire industry. I think for law students, I think there's some very interesting models now in terms of combining legal degrees with computer science and statistical modeling, the types of skills you need to kind of apply the legal principles to big data and trying to figure out ways of providing answers and solutions to clients that may be very, very different in terms of the inputs that you're taking historically. Sourcing, I think, is evolving. I think it's probably slightly less revolutionary at the moment. I think law firms like White and Case have for a long time worked with different alternative service providers, whether it's local counsel, whether it's contract lawyers. When I was a litigator starting out in the late 80s and 90s, we'd have document reviews done by others, not our law firm, to provide the service more cheaply to the clients. So I think the number of different alternative providers has expanded. I think most of the clients and the big law firms are all experimenting with what those different providers include. In particular, the legal process outsourcing providers can do for you, and really kind of feeling their way. Because there are some very tricky issues around ethics and around quality of the service, and I do think that's a bit more of an evolutionary thing, and I think it's just a period of experimentation. So I think the most significant change probably that's happened in the big law firms since the downturn in particular is around the business model and leverage. So I think clients are much less willing to pay for young lawyers. So they're much more skeptical, in many cases will not pay for a first or second or third year lawyer, and that has some big implications for the business model in terms of how you price things and how you generate revenue if you're in a big law firm. And so that and I think we're seeing that, right? Most of the big law firms, even now that we're actually quite a few years farther along from the downturn, have smaller incoming classes of young lawyers, are looking for ways to bring those young lawyers up more quickly up the learning curve so that they're productive and delivering value to clients more quickly. So investments in knowledge management and other more innovative training. Law firms have been really quite terrible at investing in their people and in training for a variety of reasons. So I think the law firms have to really rethink how they invest in people in terms of knowledge management and training. To really try to to kind of convert young lawyers into really productive contributors to the client relationships more quickly, and I think that has implications for the law schools and has implications for how law firms grow lawyers basically into more senior lawyers. And nobody really has that figured out yet, but it's, I think, a change that may not go away. So I think if you look at the law firm business model, the fact that the pyramid has shrunk is really one of the most noticeable things that would suggest to you that there has been a big change, no matter what people say, kind of publicly. And I think that's very interesting. And I was just thinking as you were talking, what would really be a game changer? I think a game changer, because there's a lot of evolution, there's a lot of big changes happening, but it's rather incremental. And sometimes you won't notice that the changes happen until maybe 10 years down the road and you look back and say, wow, that's different than it was when I started. I think the big thing that would change, that if you put all these pieces together, it would be if two of the best 40-year-old Linklaters partners and two of the best 40-year-old Freshfields partners and two of the best 40-year-old Wachtell partners and maybe another handful came together with maybe a couple of their buddies in private equity, created a new law firm with 20 partners, no associates, no home office, tons of technology, and basically came up with a completely different pricing model and started to go out and compete against the big law firms. And I think they'd be very successful. And I think it would shake up a lot of the big law firms quite considerably. And they would have no conflict problems because they'd be very small. And I think that type of model will emerge. And I think you're starting to see the beginning of it. If you read the newspapers, a number of very high-profile arbitrators have left Freshfields to start a boutique. You've got examples like Quinn Emanuel, who are very focused in their business model and are growing quite quickly. They're not that small anymore, but they're incredibly profitable because they basically have decided that they are going to sue some of the people that the big law firms won't sue. And they're being very aggressive about their business model. And I think you will see actually, if you look at your chart and you see those big players like the DLA Pipers and the Baker McKenzies who are going big, and I think a lot of firms have decided they've got to be big to just cover the globe, cover all the clients everywhere they are. And then you've got the smaller firms over like the Wachtells and the Slaughters and the Henglers in Germany, who are really focused still on a single market but serving clients globally. I think you could see an even smaller provider emerge that could be very challenging to all of those entities. And so I think if I had to kind of just pick something that would really shake up the market, I think something like that would be very interesting. That would use technology and use sourcing and use alternative service provisions to do what associates now do in a traditional law firm.